Hitting live. Hey, everybody. How is it going? I hope you all are having a great afternoon. This is a very different way for Katherine and I to be coming on live. It is 4:24 p.m. on 4/24/24. Katherine, did you know that?
I mean, I wouldn't pass this experience. Like, I wouldn't expect it to be anything different coming from you. Like, of course you lined it up that way. Or, of course, this is happening for you in that way. It's so perfect. I can't believe it.
Oh, man. Well, I am super excited to be here. Today is a pretty momentous occasion for me, and I'm really grateful for you being here with me, Katherine, as we talk a little bit about getting fired. So today is actually an anniversary for me, a 1-year anniversary. 1 year ago today, I got fired. Not for the first time in my life, but for the most impactful for sure. The other time I was fired was in college, and I deserved it, totally deserved it. But today we are going to really dig into what kind of happened over the, 1 year ago and where we've come from. So, Katherine, thank you so much for being here today. You are like the best podcast host partner of all time, and now, being here to help talk through and help our audience hear this. I just really want to share my gratitude before we even kick this off.
Well, and that gratitude goes both ways. I think it's really important for you to share your story, but also for your story to be heard. But so before we even jump into the flames of you getting fired, I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about your career history, maybe what led to you going into HR initially, and share with everybody a little bit about the path leading up to your role that you were terminated from.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, but
sorry, loaded question.
I know it's all good. I'll get there. But yesterday I actually went through and I kind of just started making a list of all the companies I'd worked for. I was kind of just being reflective, and I thought, you know what? It's been a while since I've really thought about my history, my progression over the years, and everything that I've kind of done professionally.
Yes.
So I came up with 25. Starting from my paper route when I was, oh my gosh, I was laughing with my husband about it this morning because talk about child labor. I started working a paper route when I was about 6 years old.
Oh yeah, child labor laws violated all over the place.
But anyway, so it was really fun, and it was kind of cathartic to kind of go through and think about. I even put together, I'm a total nerd and a dork, but I put together all these old business cards.
God,
I kept all the business cards of everywhere where I've worked before. But anyway, a little bit about me and why have I worked so many places. I think one of the things about me that I really love about myself is I'm what I call an adventurous loner. I'm somebody who can be on her own pretty easily and comfortably. I grew up in Southern California, so I'm a SoCal girl. And if you know the area, if you've not been there, you still know at least visually, the water canals that they have for overflow that they have in different desert areas. I grew up with that in my backyard. And so as a kid, I was Adventure City. I was going down. Nowadays, it's homeless city, right? You can't do that anymore. But here, this was in the late 70s, early 80s. Long time ago, but that was my childhood. And so as I look back and kind of see the progression of the paper route, and then my first real job was Taco Bell, and through all my my career, this adventurous loner spirit has always been kind of a part of who I am. And I think a part of that being who I am is also about wanting to be willing to not settle, I think. And one of the things that I learned really early on in my professional career is like this tenacity for being willing to kind of put myself out, even if it meant risk, right? And exposure. And so professionally, I think I'd gotten to um, a really like confident place where over the years there might be 25 different names on that list of places I've worked with, but I think I've really kind of worked at wanting to find somewhere where I felt like
Ah,
valued and accepted and seen and heard, and that I also felt like the impact I was making fed me. And so that has been kind
mm,
of my career over years and years. And when you look at this list, like it's so funny. I'll have to take a picture of it, Catherine, and send it to you and even share. I could share it in the notes for
love
today
it.
because it's kind of hilarious, you know, like I think we all of us have our stories around where we've been and kind of what we've done. And, you know, I think mine is no different, but I think mine is just a little longer than a lot of others. And for me, that's not a bad thing. I think for some people, they'll look at a long list of different places that they've worked and they see that as though almost like that they've failed in some way. And
Mm,
that's I think what for me, I've from the very beginning, I've kind of shifted that narrative on myself. And so when we get to then the employer that I faithfully was fired from, I was able to shift that narrative pretty darn quickly. And a lot
awesome.
of it I think comes back to this child who was adventuring in the canals of SoCal and who has kind of pushed her way throughout
Mm,
her career. But what I think is so interesting about this particular role is you and I talk on the podcast every single week around the growth that we have experienced over the last several years and how much that growth has caused us actually to shift in the way that we show up, the way that we show up professionally, personally, everything, right?
yes.
And when that happened for me, this was the first job that I had as I was now much more clear, confident, grounded. All of those things I think comes with it kind of the process of growth.
Yeah.
And that was not received super well. So I think
Interesting.
a sneak peek as where this is going, but a lot of it actually had to do with the process of me growing so much so that I wasn't taking the bullshit I was taking before. I wasn't putting up with the people pleasing I was doing anymore. And that wasn't quite finessed yet
Mm,
in such a
yes.
way that it didn't rub people wrong enough that I got axed. Oh,
Okay.
we can summarize it right here and now, but really that's the summary.
So wait, how long were you in the role before
Okay.
they let you go?
5 months.
5
So
months.
it definitely wasn't my longest HR role by far.
Okay. Well, do you know why? Do you know why they let you go? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I mean, really, the reason I was told is because I just wasn't a good fit. So
Okay.
a little bit of background around what brought me into that particular role, because prior to that, I had taken almost a 2-year gap in human resources from that. So, for
Right.
those who know a little bit about me, I've been in HR since the year 2000. And it was in 2021 that I stepped away from a leadership role in HR to do coaching. And that's kind of my passion and my love. And I got certified in COVID and all of that. And then I went out and I did that for a period of time. I grew exponentially. And from there, then when financially it just wasn't cutting it, when I came back into the HR world, that was where it really like it was almost like night and day. I mean,
Yeah.
I can talk about that for hours on the podcast of like the HR me in 2000, prior to 2000 was very different than the HR me that showed up in this role when I started in November of 2022. Completely different.
Completely
And
different.
when that happened, I really didn't yet have the tools in terms of being able to handle how to address boundaries in a way that's not going to turn someone off or they feel, attacked or, whatever
Sure.
that may be. So yeah, all of those things I think hadn't been fine tuned yet, but all of that, looking at that period of time where I stepped away from HR and then came back into it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's all very clear now that I can see how that then was a complete shift, not only in my own identity, but then how then that came out to others and how that didn't taste so sweet.
So interesting. So,
Yeah.
well, how, like, what was your reaction to being let go? And how did you cope?
Yeah. Yeah, I think just like everybody and anybody else, it was all the emotions, right? Like
Um,
I think, in my particular situation, and I think in most people's situation, right? If we're being let go, laid off, whatever it might be. I mean, let's be honest too. I mean, being laid off and fired doesn't feel all that different at the end of the day. Rejection, rejection, rejection. Like it's all kind of the same thing. But for me, it's about processing the rejection. I'm not good enough. I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel worthy enough. Like I felt as though, what I could have done differently or what was, how making it my fault. So I think as humans, we're going to go through these normal reactions and I think they're actually healthy. I think it's important. I think it's really, really part of the process to make sure that we are processing what needs to be processed, and that's what I did. I think the first few weeks, I didn't even look for a job. I did not start to like put myself out there until I could clear out some mess. So clear out the mess. And so
yeah.
I went on a lot of hikes. I was lucky I got fired on April 24th, right, of 2023. So the weather was starting to turn really good and I got
Mm,
outside. I went and just completely tried to figure my stuff out, right? Like I can't control the uncontrollable, but what I can control is right here in front of me. And so that's what I did. I got to work. And so I first, yeah, felt what I needed to feel. I got mad. Like I remember one hike, I went out kind of in boonies and let some stuff out. And I needed to, right? Like at the
yeah.
end of the day, even though, I'm saying that I'm kind of taking ownership of what happened in the situation, but they didn't handle it well either at all. I mean, it was not handled well. And so like I can now be really conscious of that here a year later, but at the time there was a lot of anger and there was a lot of disappointment. Um Confusion. Yeah, like, all of those things were just coming up for me, and until I
Mm,
could process them within myself, that anger within myself of knowing that even though, "Hey, you know what? I have done a shit ton of work to be at a point where I'm gonna show up exactly as I am,
hell yeah.
regardless of how other people feel and think about it," right? But at the same time, as a human who is not necessarily wanting to people please, but I didn't want to, we're not my intention of getting fired, right? So here in
Right.
reflection and after the fact, I'm going back and going, oh, what if this? What if I said that? Could I have done this? And
Yeah.
so that's part of it too, right? The bargaining. What are like these 5 stages? You've got the denial, and you've got bargaining, and then there's acceptance at some point. So I think part of my coaching training now was like really being able to get to that pretty quickly and
Yeah.
say, okay, you know what? These are emotions. I need to make sure I'm feeling these emotions. I do not want to skip over this step. And like I said, I did not want to get my resume out. I certainly do not want to get a call, start getting on calls for interviews until I could get it
Yes.
figured out. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't perfect. It was messy. I still have things that come up for me from time to
Mm,
time where I'm like, ooh, okay, yeah, I still got, like even with this, I could feel that there is some resentment in that. And, that's normal. that's normal. I think part of that then is a good opportunity for me to check in with myself and go, okay, what do I still need to learn? What is it I still have not like fully gained or grown from this? Because that's typically why then why it's still stuck, why that pattern is repeating itself. So
Yeah.
I went on and on with that, but I think that answered the question.
You totally answered the question, and it's so real. And I just appreciate you being so honest about it. It's really powerful. I'm curious, like now that it's quite literally a full 12 months, after this occurrence happened, and you've had 12 months of reflection, what's your perspective on this experience now?
I think that we we need to embrace the things that happen to us. The quote unquote like tragedies, and it really sucks, that things happen to us the way they do in life. But I think that I really am starting to become more and more in tune, quicker and quicker, to be able
Mm,
to really recognize how beautiful these can be. And with this in
mm,
particular, I feel like I had come, I mean, in terms of my growth over the last few years, I had some really impactful things happen where not only did I like kind of wake up, in terms of like the way I was looking at myself in the world, I was shaken awake in a really
mm.
dramatic way. And that happening, and once that happened, I think I just had a no tolerance for bullshit threshold. And so when, this first job came around where I was, kind of on my own and doing my own thing for a couple of years, there was some that needed to be chipped away from me in
Huh.
terms of like coming out the gate, and I had something to prove, I felt like. And so I think in reflection, in terms of like looking back of being let go and all of that, I'm like, damn, she did kind of deserve it, because I'm
Mm.
still finding myself, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be 50 in 2 months and I am still finding myself. So getting fired after going through so much personal growth and feeling like I had come so far was humbling in
Mm.
actually the best possible way. I think we
Wow.
absolutely need to be taken off that, like, yeah, I think it's like, I don't wanna say, like, I needed to be taken off my high horse, because I really know that I'd worked really, really hard to even get to where I was a year ago today.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm saying I deserved it, but I think having things sometimes shake us like that, right? We have no control of it. It's just shaking. Having that happen to us, and then the ability to like look at it really honestly, really openly, and being able to kind of hold that space for what you own, that is one of the most powerful things I've ever been able to do. And I think this termination has been why I say it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given.
Mm.
Because yeah, I had thought that I really had come so far, right?
Yeah.
But yet there's always so much more. And I think that we need sometimes those, that we need it. We don't know at the time. Like my coach will say all the time, he's like, there's always going to be a significant learning. And the more traumatic and more significant of event, the more significant the learning. And the more, not the more,
Mm.
the longer it may take until it finally like before it's realized, right?
Wow.
Like, that's the thing that I think was the aha for me, that in this
Yeah.
instance, and this is why here I am a year later, I can talk about this really easy. What I can't talk so easily about is the trauma that led right to the awakening to that. And that, I think, is what the reality is the more deeply impactful, the more traumatic it is when we are really getting to, when we finally get to the point where we can articulate it and we can talk to it. That's when we will heal, and that's when we will grow, and that's when we evolve. So that's why I think today, and why, you and I having the podcast that we do and having the platform that we do is so important, because we help give permission to everyone out there around being able to speak to that truth. Yeah, I was fired. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, the reality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Whoo! I have so many questions, but I'm going to go with the one that's really, really coming to me. I have so many questions. Like, excuse me, how you talked about this a little bit, but how has this experience really kind of shaped your approach to your next role and your life? I'd imagine it has like a pretty significant influence. So has it? How, and if so, like, how did it impact your approach to your next role and your life right now?
So, one of the things that was really clear and evident from pretty much the first day that I had started in this job was that it was a mismatch between me and my manager. And I knew it. I knew it. And yet, 5 months went by, and the role was really interesting because it was a business partner role where I was remote from the corporate office, but yet I
Mhm.
was located in the region of the people that I served. And so my immediate manager and I, we didn't have day-to-day interactions in person. We didn't have an opportunity to connect in person at all. And
Mhm.
so even though when I went through the interview process, it seemed like we were connected really well, decently. It wasn't until we met in person when I was doing my training that I knew. And I think
Wow.
every single person can relate to that, where you just there either is or there isn't. And in this situation, one of the things that, I can say too is this position actually was a step down for me in terms of professionally. So prior to this role, I was in a director position, and that's when then I stepped away to do coaching. So when I came back into HR, I didn't want no director position. I wanted to have something that was going to allow me to still be able to maybe do some coaching on the
Sure.
side. And so my goal was to find something that was going to be a little bit more, you know, kind of not easy, but definitely not as leadership. Well, my boss in this position, yeah, when I first met her, I could that distance I could feel immediately, where I don't think she was really comfortable having someone that she felt. I had an MBA, she didn't have an MBA. I had more years of experience than she did. All of these things after all my years of coaching was not a problem for me. Immediately was not a problem for me. It didn't even occur to me. But the
Wow.
energy the first day I met her, the like, yeah, it was off from right away, and I didn't click until after I got
Wow.
fired. So it wasn't until after I got fired and I was in a therapy session and I was talking with my therapist about like the whole thing and where I was, and I was still processing some anger. And she started saying, "So tell me about like the first day. Tell me about first, meeting your boss." And I started talking about our first interactions, and she was like, "She was threatened by you. She was really threatened by you." And so then I started talking about some of the instances that then led to me being let go. And yeah, I can get I can get a little passionate, and I definitely have my voice. But in the instances, my therapist, which, again, HR peeps, have a therapist, have people we talk to, because they help bring this stuff out that a
Yeah.
lot of times we don't really realize. We don't not understand, but so many of us, we don't see these things that are under the surface. So that was what what was the case in this situation where from the start there was, an offness between myself
Mm,
and this manager. And so in looking back, the therapist was able to kind of see how she was really struggling with that dynamic, even though it went right over my head, because it just wasn't anything that about it. I don't think about it anymore. It's not a problem for
yeah.
me, but it was a problem for her. And I
Mm.
think so when we talk about like advice, or remind me of the question you asked, because there was something in the question that I was going to with that.
How did this really shape your
Yeah.
approach to your next role and your
Yeah.
life?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that in going back to that and my day one intuition and my instincts and the
Ah,
things that we can pick up on, that sometimes we don't take the time to really touch in with ourselves and do that real check with ourselves, because we all need a paycheck, right? We need to feed the family. We got to have a livelihood. Having a job is really, really important. And it's so tough sometimes when we're put into these positions, not only just with the job we take, right, but with projects we agree to, with
yeah.
assignments we take on, right? Every single thing we take on is an opportunity to check in with ourselves around the voices that perhaps we're glossing over
Mm,
because of whatever those reasons might be, right? In
mm.
my case at the time, I needed a job so bad that I was
Ah,
completely willing to overlook. The job market at the time wasn't great. Mental health wise, I was not at my best. So I needed a job. And so I looked right past it, even though my instincts knew it day one.
wow.
So, yeah, I think that is one of the things in retrospect that I have now not started, but I think in terms of like recognizing how much I could have saved within myself,
Mm,
how much I think sometimes we take for granted the instincts within ourselves that are actually trying to tell us exactly what it is that is right and what it is that's not right.
pay attention.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
I mean, I've taken away so many nuggets from what you've been sharing. Do you have any like real specific advice you would give to somebody who's recently faced something similar, maybe a professional setback or a rejection? Do you have any really specific advice for that person?
Yeah, I think in terms of the best advice that I can give is that the setbacks are always opportunities, first of all. It's always an opportunity. And I think you and I have talked about this quite a bit on how much the people that we work with can get so caught up in those setbacks and, the what ifs and the should haves and those types of things can be the end of like so much of a an opportunity to really be able to reset,
Yeah.
recalibrate,
Yes.
realign,
Yes.
all the things, and I think that for me, one of the things I wanted to most be able to help others take away from this is that I don't care if you've been in your role 1 day or 30 years. I mean, I work with people right now at where I'm working who have been in their role for 30 years
I believe
who
it.
are like, I think I may have chosen the wrong career. And that just happened today. And so, it's life is gonna it it's gonna throw you some curveballs. And if we ever get to the point where we believe that we don't have the opportunity to shape shift at any time, I think that is it breaks my heart. Anytime I hear, a manager, a leader, anybody get into that space of it's too late, I'm too old, my time has passed, and those types of thoughts and beliefs that I think we can really truly believe. We ground ourselves in these lies. And my hope so much is to help people realize that at any time we can change. And at any
Mm,
time when we know that our senses and our inner and our inner inside is telling us that something isn't right, that something feels off, that it's wrong in some way, it's time to start questioning that.
mm,
And whether that be through coaching or whether that be through therapy, whether or not that be through close friends and some tribe that we have, to
mm.
be able to start getting that out, to really explore what's going on. Because a lot of times, and I know, Catherine, you've seen this so many times, is people they start to think that they're stagnant, that they're stuck, and they start to kind of feel that sense of confinement, and really it's because they haven't really given an opportunity to kind of think outside the,
Yeah.
the confines of kind of the internal box, so to speak, right? So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, what opportunities do the setbacks that you've been presented give you to be able to reevaluate and realign? And that is not an easy thing. It takes some courage, it takes some inner strength, and all of those things, I think, is exactly why you're here. And
Mm,
exactly why I'm here is for people to know they have the support to be able to change what's no longer working for them, and to not wait for someone else. That's like, I was thinking about it today as I was driving to work. I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, how many times was I or friends, think about like our first relationships in middle school and high school, right? Like, we want to break up so bad, but we don't want to be the one to have to break up with them. So, you're waiting for the other to break up. So it's like, within each of us now, when you really think about that job, career, employer, boss, what is it in your life that really deep down you need to break up? And
Mm,
that is really the biggest takeaway I want to leave with everyone, because this is a conversation about something that happened to me that I knew in the first 5 minutes that I really should have been the one to do. And I think most of us out there have that within us, that we know that
mm,
there's somewhere that we really should be breaking up. And we want to be there to help people know that it's
mm.
never too late to make that decision.
I mean, when you started talking about your coworker who's been there for 30 years
Yeah.
and thinks that they chose the wrong profession, I mean, I just reacted all over my body. Maybe because it happened for me at 25
Yeah.
years, but that really got me.
Yeah. And what an opportunity to reframe into something beautiful. And that's what I tried to do today. And it was like such a great reshift, because it's been something that they've been toying with for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I think that just like all of us, sometimes I think deep down feel as though we're waiting for permission actually to do the things that we really, really want to do. I think the same goes in a situation like this, right? It's that permission to actually be able to recognize something for what it is. And, that I think we all have within ourselves at any time. But it's like that validation. Sometimes I get it. I get it. Like, we all kind of have that need and that desire. So how can we start to be more intentional to
Mm,
go for it, instead
yeah.
of continuing that cycle, continuing in that pattern that's not serving us, and instead break the cycle, be intentional, and start somewhere. Damn
Whew,
it.
hell yeah. I feel like the permission. I mean, that is something that how you showed up today, you're giving other people permission to rethink perhaps their setback or their termination or anything in their life that needs a little redirection. And I watch you, obviously, every single week on the podcast. And you just, it's amazing what you have envisioned and put forth and created. I mean, the podcast is your baby. This was your idea. So huge congratulations to you on seeing that come to fruition. I'm curious, what else is on the horizon for you? What's next for you?
Well, let's pause and talk about the podcast for a second.
Okay.
Because yes, the idea was something that I came to you with, but the fact that we've been able to create collectively what we've been able to create is just a masterpiece, So I think sometimes you can start with the nuggets, but it's not going to be until you actually start to cultivate. I was just talking with
Ooh.
somebody the other day about, they were getting frustrated because they're a leader and they have employees who keep talking about growth and talking about moving up, but God damn it, if they not doing it, right? And so this leader is like getting frustrated about these employees who are like, talking about it, talking about it, talking about it. And I get it, right? Because you can only talk about stuff so much. But if you're going to talk and talk and talk and not actually take the action to cultivate and see it grow, I don't know what to tell you, right? And so when it comes to these employees, we had one just recently then put their name in for a promotion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. The fact that they haven't taken any training, they haven't done any initiative, they haven't shown anything other than the
Ah,
lip service, and now you want to take the role. So anyway, I digress. But where I was going with that is like with this podcast, I came to you with the seed of an idea. You then already have this amazing HR and Power Hour, right? No, seriously, because HR and Power Hour is incredible. And so what we were able to do is basically take something you already created for the entire year and be able to have content built for an entire year for not only the HR and Power Hour, which is where you're able to do the deeper dives, but then for a podcast where we can talk about this stuff at like the higher level. And it really matters, both at the
yeah.
higher level and also going the deeper dive. So, wow, look at this. Here we are 13 episodes in on something that started with a seed that then grew because you already had the content built. And then it was a matter of creating cool logos and, all of that.
That's
But
right.
and really, this is the greatest gift I think I've ever really been given, because this podcast is our way of being able to share what you are so amazing at, which is like going deep into like the neuroplasticity and really understanding like how it's like, hey, everybody, it's like so far beyond all of the things that we think is causing us to act in the crazy ways we do. Let's dive in. Right. And so anyway, like when we talk about, where we're at with the podcast and how we're in the process of really building this amazing thing, that's where my head goes first, is like, how can we take this podcast on the road? How can we have the ability to do some sponsorships and be able to start,
Oh,
infusing this podcast so we get it out there to an audience that is much, much bigger than it is now. And I think that that's all something that I see. So those, you know,
mm,
um, having a lot of excitement around that in the coming months and seeing how we continue to, get more people downloading and listening. And then from there, I can't wait to start doing a little bit more coaching. As you all know on here, I am working full time. I've got family, I've got the podcast. And in addition to that, I am going to be launching a program this summer. So I'm going to be doing a 6-month coaching program that is going to be really exciting. It's going to be a bi-weekly thing. It's not going to be every single week, but it's going to be 6 months, every other week, coming on with me, really spending that time. It's called a Live to Thrive. So I've launched a Live to Thrive in the past. It was a 6-week program. And now I'm like, hell no. If you want to, and I know, because you got your 1 year, a subscription and all of that. If you really are going to get in and help people to be able to lay that foundation and launch from that foundation, I can't do it in less than 6 months. So I'm really excited to be.
Wow.
I've got the details I'm putting together. I'm going to start going live every other Monday in the evenings to be able to start building some audience around it. So I'm going to have my first invite on that. That'll be coming out probably in the next couple of days. And I think the first one I'm doing is this next Monday. So
oh my gosh.
So live on Mondays at, I think, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So
This is amazing.
Thank you.
So wait, this Monday, as in the 29th. Do I have my dates right?
29th of April at 5 p.m. Pacific, and doing that every other week. So we are going to get out probably in the next couple of days. I'm trying to figure out, as anyone who had a chance to listen to us the other day, haven't uploaded the podcast yet. So I apologize for all y'all loyal podcast listeners. I'll get that up tonight. But it's been a challenge this week with the podcast and also with getting the live going yesterday. So there's a couple of tweaky things that I'm trying to work out in terms of how we're going to be live streaming, but figuring it out and getting it all squared away. But you can definitely count on the 29th at 5 p.m.
Amazing. Well, I will definitely be there. I can't wait to be there.
Yay. Yay.
What a beautifully articulated, inspiring, and permission-giving story you shared tonight. And what when you talk about the podcast and where you see it going and having this huge vision, you just depicted what a growth mindset is. And I just want to thank you for sharing that, because I do feel as though women in HR, you do tend to get fixed, and you don't, a fixed mindset, Carol Dweck's work. And you just articulated how beautiful life can be when you see something and you plant the seed, such as a podcast, such as a Live to Thrive 6-month killer program every other week, boom. And you bring that to the world. Thank you for doing that. And so I cannot wait to bear witness to how all of this unfolds for you. Congratulations. It's remarkable.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have the podcast and the opportunity to just have the audience we do. I'm so grateful for, everyone who was able to join today. And Katherine, thank you for being my moderator. And
so fun.
Ask her. It was really such a gift to be able to have you.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have missed it. I would have been really mad if you didn't ask me. So thank you for asking me.
You are welcome anytime. Well, everyone, I want to thank you so much for being here. Again, 4/24/24 is such a special day for me now. And I am just so grateful to have been able to spend it with you all. And again, I want to show you guys, for all of you who, question whether or not you have had too many jobs or not enough jobs or whatever. Look, y'all. 25 jobs in HR, and I am here to tell you do not ever, ever, ever give up on what you know is right for you. And even if that means job after job after job, I think you deserve, every single one of you out there deserve to be treated and deserve a role that is going to help you to thrive. So again, Katherine, thank you again so much. And everybody have a wonderful evening.
Amazing. Thanks, Jen.